The Big Hot Story! Yay!
Hello, TruWonder. It's Remember and Celebrate, a special time where we pause what we've been learning in the Big God story to remember and celebrate everything we've been learning about God in the Big God story, as well as in our own lives. Today, we're going to take a look back with my special boxes and see if these clues can remind us about all of the wonderful things we've learned about God, specifically that God is trustworthy. So let's dive in with box number 1. Okay, there's going to be a clue in here about a story we learned. Let's see if you can remember. Okay, a crown. Do you guys remember a story when we kept putting crowns on our heads? Who usually wears a crown? Kings and queens usually wear crowns. And even though God is the one true king, the Israelites wanted what everybody else had, right? They wanted a human king of their own. And so God gave them a human king. God chose a man named Saul to be the first king over Israel. And remember, at first Saul listened to God's voice and did what God said. But then Saul soon forgot that God was the one in charge and started making his own choices and being selfish, bad choices. So what did God do then? Well, God gave the job to someone else. And so what does this story tell us about God? That God is in charge. All right, are we ready for box number 2? Here we go. I wonder what's inside. A pillow. Do you remember a story we learned about where someone was sleeping? That's right. We learned about how Joseph was sleeping and had a very special dream. An angel appeared to Joseph and told him that Mary was going to have the Savior of the world. She was going to have a baby. Do you remember what the angel told Joseph to name the baby? Jesus. And that the baby's name meant Emmanuel. What does Emmanuel mean? Emmanuel means God is with us. So what does this story of the pillow remind us? That Jesus is Emmanuel. Okay, this next box, I couldn't even fit our item into it. It's so big. But as you can see here, I have a birthday present, and inside I have a balloon. We use these things for birthday parties, right? Well, this was a very special story we learned about when Jesus was born. On Jesus' birthday, do you remember how God announced that Jesus had been born? God sent angels to some shepherds who were on a field. And the angels told the shepherds not to be afraid because they brought good news for everyone. God's Son had come to earth to save people from their sins so that they could be with God forever. So this story reminds us that Jesus is born and that Jesus is our Savior. You guys are doing an incredible job at remembering. Should we keep going? All right. This is box number 4. Let's see if you guys remember this one. This is a map of stars. You guys remember what we learned about with the map of stars? Well, in the Big God story, God put a very special star in the sky. And some people called Magi who studied the stars saw it, and they knew that this star meant that a king had been born. And so these wise men or Magi followed the star, and God pointed the Magi to Jesus. Do you remember what they brought with them to worship Jesus? They brought gold and frankincense and myrrh. And this story reminds us that just like God pointed the wise men to Jesus, God points us to Jesus. Well, friends, we only have one box left. Box number 5. Let's see what's inside. Ooh, a stone. Do you remember who helped me tell the story last week? Dorinda. What did a big smooth stone have to do with the big God story? Well, this part of the story was about David and how God chose David to be king after Saul, right? And David used this stone to fight for God's people. Because when David heard about all of the horrible things Goliath was saying about God, he knew that he had to fight the giant. David trusted God to help him defeat the giant. And what did God do? God used that smooth stone to defeat Goliath. So what does this story teach us about God? That God is strong. Well, friends, we finished our review of remembering and celebrating today all of our stories. It is so important to take time in our lives to look back at all of the incredible things God has done. And these stories remind us that God is trustworthy because all the way at the beginning of the big God story, God promised that he would send a savior, Jesus, right? And in these stories of Saul and David, we see that God is trustworthy to save his people when they cry out for help and to always be with us. Well, friends, I hope you have a wonderful week. I encourage you to take some time now to talk with your family about ways you can remember and celebrate God as trustworthy in your lives. I love you all, and we'll see you next week for the Big God Story. Goodbye.